an upper bound beyond which further tax increases will have little to no effect. We are going to see foreign demand for U.S. debt dry up for a variety of reasons. I mean, part of it is precisely the demographic crisis that a lot of these other countries are going to be facing. And so this makes the national debt seem like nothing, because the demographic crisis that we're going to be facing deals with the entitlement programs, and those, we've got a shortfall there of on the order of $111 trillion. Now you just can't tax or borrow or print your way out of that. I mean, one way or another, decisions are going to have to be made. And so $14 trillion in the national debt, now it seems like peanuts. I mean, if anything, I hope you feel better now. The national debt really isn't so bad after all. Okay. By 2020, even assuming the rosiest scenario, that we've got a robust recovery from the current malaise and interest rates stay at the super low levels they are now, the U.S. government is going to be owing nearly $1 trillion in interest alone every year starting in 2020. That's the best scenario. So the best scenario is the federal government's just going to open up a window, throw $1 trillion out. It's very different from what they normally do, as you can see. It's a totally different situation. And then the states. Okay, well, we have some states that are doing okay. I think Texas is doing reasonably well. But plenty of states are on the verge of bankruptcy. We've got 7 states whose pension funds are going to be bust by 2020, another 13 by 2025. And they last even that long, only assuming that they're making an 8% return per year. Which I think there's a teensy-weensy chance that that might not happen. Now, I didn't realize that one of my old college friends from my Harvard days, Harry Wilson, ran for New York comptroller this year, and he almost won, a total outsider. He almost won. And I found out about it because I was reading a New York Times article where he was quoted, because at the time, this was last year, the governor was considering a proposal to bail out the pension fund by borrowing from the pension fund. People are saying, what? How could this be? Well, I'm afraid it is. That is an indication that the thing is over. The game is up. And of course, the poster child for all this is Detroit. Detroit is a city where it's the very model of spending and regulation and welfare and everything. And all these programs that we've been ogres for not supporting. Why? You must hate the human race. You must be a big hater. Blah, 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 blah. The typical Orwellian terms they throw out at you. But when you look at what actually happened in Detroit, if I wanted to wreck a city, I would do precisely these things. If I wanted to hurt people, I would do precisely these things. You look at what happened to it. About a quarter of the schools are closing. The money is gone. Half the people have left. And what happened to the housing market? Well, in 2003, the median home price was $98,000. By 2009, it was down to about $14,000. You think, oh, wow, that really hit rock bottom. No, in 2010, it hit $7,000. And this is a microcosm for what may well be coming. And given the scale of what happened to Detroit, the likes of which we have not seen in American urban history, given that scale, there was, relatively speaking, no coverage of this. Absolute silence. And of course, the young generation, good luck to all of us, right? I mean, you notice how I included myself? But I mean, really. I mean, if you're in your teens or 20s or 30s, basically the current system is rigged so that you have to just work and work and work till you drop dead on behalf of a system that's going to collapse anyway. Well, that's just great. Well, I'm not going to go into more statistics about that, partly because my publisher happily has put up a free chapter of the book online, and it's a chapter where I lay out, okay, here is what we're facing. And it's all facts that no one disputes. I'm not contriving a crisis. These are all facts that no one disputes. So if you'd like to read that free chapter, it's at ROLLBACKbook.com or through my website, TomWoods.com. Instead, I want to move on to the second and more fun part of the presentation, which is the part when we re-examine and re-evaluate all these claims we got in 6th grade. Wherever would we be without Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell and their paternal custodianship of us all, their hearts aflame with a desire for justice for us? Like, where would we all be, right? So first of all, I mean, let's think about the sort of things that we all learn. I remember that when I graduated high school, I was under the impression that honestly, if it hadn't been for these icons before whom we waved incense in the classroom every day, these great men whom we saw, all these great presidents, if it hadn't been for them, we'd all be, probably dead or in a pit somewhere, and, But yet, the facts are exactly the opposite. Look at what's happened to poverty around the world. Poverty is the great sticking point. Well, you know, capitalism is incompatible with a high standard of living for everybody. Well, that's exactly the opposite is the truth. Absolute poverty, what economists call absolute poverty, afflicted 85% of the world's population in 1820. That was down to 50% by 1950, without any particularly substantial government programs, down to 33% by the early 1980s. By 2001, down to about 18%. And in fact, from 1981 to 2001, not only the percentage, but also the absolute number of people in poverty fell. That had never happened in any 20-year period in history. In the developing countries, we've seen substantial rises in life expectancy and caloric intake. In the U.S., we look at the U.S. poverty levels. Now here we're not talking about the more desperate absolute poverty, but what we recognize as American-style poverty. That figure declined over the course of the 20th century from roughly 95% to roughly the 12 to 14% we have now. The bottom quintile saw their real incomes increase 1,900%, which was much more than any other income group saw. And they were able to acquire amenities that would have been prohibitive luxuries to even the richest, to even kings and queens in previous eras. Well, this is not just a funny coincidence that economies around the world begin to liberalize, there's more respect for law and private property and free exchange, and then at the same time poverty falls. One of the purposes of rollback is indeed to show that there is a connection. This isn't just fortuitous or just happened to occur and we don't know why it did. We do indeed know why it did. It's precisely because of the market economy, for reasons I explain in here. But the market never gets the credit for this. It gets blamed. It gets blamed for things, but it doesn't get the credit for things that it actually accomplishes. Let's look at the things it gets blamed for. And you notice that a lot of these things are things that the government did. But somehow they are the fault of the free market. Now, this one's a little bit obscure. Some of you guys might be a little too young to remember this. In the late 1990s, we were told, man, that stupid free market that all you selfish people are trying to force on us, well, it has screwed us again thanks to energy deregulation in California. Look, we got rolling blackouts thanks to your free markets. Well, we need our wise overlords back in charge, and next time you guys shouldn't get so uppity. They know how to provide electricity to you. Okay, look at what actually happened. We did have the rolling blackouts, but what deregulation are they talking about? Okay, wholesale prices of electricity, which the state's electric power distributors pay, those could fluctuate. But retail prices for electricity were fixed. And this is at a time when demand is surging for electricity in California because the population was increasing considerably, and the flourishing computer industry has voracious power demands. And so here's the situation. And also, no additional power plants were allowed to be opened, and some were forced to close. And this is the free market's fault, you see. It's the free market's fault that demand surges. Prices aren't allowed to adjust to reflect this new situation. And this just goes to show we need more government control. I mean, really, what kind of a shill for the regime would you have to be to repeat a story like this? Like, it's not even like there are two sides to the story and I'm just giving you one. This is the story. All right, or let's consider, I'm going to do this one quickly. You might think, oh, this is kind of technical. Why is he going through this? Because it has to be gone through. Because if I hear this one more time, I'm going to commit an atrocity, and I really don't want that to happen. I've gone through my life a very, very decent and good and peaceful person up to this point. And again, some of you guys are too young for this. And this is great, by the way, that this room is so filled with young people. Not that older people are bad. I mean, I'll be joining you there. We're on the verge here. But great. I mean, it's so wonderful because a lot of these conferences, it's like pulling teeth to get people to come. And great to see all you folks. But in the 1980s, we had the savings and loan problem. The savings and loans were institutions the government established to help people get affordable housing. Yes, indeed, the affordable housing situation. Well, here's the business model of the S&L. They could charge 6% on 30-year mortgages. You take a 30-year mortgage, you pay 6% on it, and that's the deal, 6%. And then depositors could get 3%. And today, 3% sounds awesome. Wow, 3% for a deposit. But in the 1980s, that was kind of looking pretty bad. You've got double-digit inflation. Your lousy 3% return isn't really so great. And so it was in making up the difference there, that's how they made